The Big Apple rotting at its core. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Monday, January 12th, 2026. Vic, I picked Winnipeg to end their winless streak on Friday. Morren and Neil, 15-2-3 in the last 4 days. Smith, joining you for pretty lively discussion we're going to have here, but I've got to celebrate the job that you're doing on sPix before we take a look at your former team, which is heading in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I've had some real good luck in the last few days on sPix, and if you were betting based upon my recommendations, you might be winning some money now, finally. But you did the perfect thing, saying that the Jets were going to end their winless streak finally, and they did that against the LA Kings. Here we go. Let's start with Saturday afternoon on national over-the-air TV.
The New York Rangers blasted 10-2 by the Bruins. They're 0-2-1 since the Winter Classic, which was supposed to be the turning point for them. Outscored 18-6 in the process. They're 5-8-4 in their last 17 games. You looked at that performance on Saturday, and Mika Zibanejad scored early. Rangers looked like they were off to a start that they wanted to have, and then defensive breakdowns, offensive miscommunication. Jonathan Quick, you can't fault him on anything. Career retread. Spencer Martin came in, and it might as well have been Dean Martin playing in golf.
It was just despicable. So the Winter Classic, which we will remind everybody was New York playing against the Florida Panthers in the Marlin Stadium in Miami, outdoors. The Rangers won 5-1 over the hometown Panthers. Mika Zibanejad was by far the best player in the game, played tremendous. It was his coming out party, but it was not his team's coming out party because they've been awful since then. However, Zibanejad has kept up his stellar play, unlike Panarin, who you can't find with a compass.
JT Miller was awful Saturday.
Awful.
And it was terrible. I mean, Alexis Lafreniere, his nickname is Fats because of his large contract and no delivery that he has given. This was so bad on Saturday. Mike Sullivan was at a loss for words, which I don't know how you can be at a loss for words when your team goes completely belly up in front of a nationally televised audience.
I don't know. And you're the great Mike Sullivan that's going to be Team USA coach, and you've got the great president GM Chris Drury of the New York Rangers, who's going to be one of the assistant GMs to Bill Guerin that we had on the show this past week, who's the GM of Team USA. You got all these guys together that are in these prestigious positions, and they're lost for words with their own team that they have complete control over. It makes no sense to me. Yes, Adam Fox was out of the lineup. He's hurt. Yes, Shesterkin is out of the lineup. He's hurt. But Jonathan Quick has had a good couple of years with the Rangers. I mean, he's been really good for them. He wasn't good in Boston, but it wasn't his fault. It was a total breakdown. Their defense, you can't even recognize their defense anymore. Like, who's playing for them? I mean, I'll bet you I can't name their 6 defensemen right now. And up front, they're not getting the improved play from guys like Will Cooley that they thought they were going to get. And their Lafreniere is not taking a step forward in his career like everybody thought he would when he got that huge contract. The thing is a disaster. It really is a disaster in Madison Square Garden.
I think when you look at the collective parts of this team, this roster, you're supposed to build a roster, right? You're a GM. You had some success. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
A little bit.
You're supposed to build a club, not dismantle it. And that appears to be what has gone on in New York, because injuries aside, and everybody's had injuries, and nobody's going to feel sorry for any team in the league here. When you look at the collective parts of the New York Rangers, even when healthy, this team is probably in the bottom quarter in terms of talent, top to bottom. And bottom quarter may even be a little bit generous.
Absolutely. They're not good. They are not good. That's the bottom line. And, you know, in the New York area, you see all the time the three teams play. Obviously, the Rangers, the Islanders, and the Devils. They're a distant third. And I got to tell you, when we did our preseason previews, which are called summer coolers, we thought the Islanders would be number 3. Well, they're not. The Rangers are clearly number 3 in the New York metro area.
I think you're going to have two schools of thought here. You're going to have the optimists, and then you're going to have the realists. And here's the math for the Rangers. They have played 46 games, which is tied for the most in the NHL. They have 46 points, which, even with my math skills, that's NHL 500. They're 6 points out of a spot, but the cutoff to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference as of Monday morning is 95. I don't see this team going 13 games over 500 in a 36-game span.
No chance. There's no chance. And you know what? And that's not that you don't like the team or that you're anti-Rangers or anything else, because we're not. It's just realism. It's reality. This is the reality of their situation. There has been no signs this season that they couldn't go on a run. None. No sign whatsoever. You can't even say, well, remember that weekend that they had 3 great games in a row. No, there hasn't been one. They haven't gone on any runs, and they're not going to go on any runs. And even when they're totally healthy, Adam Fox is not the Adam Fox we've seen in the past. Part of that's his own doing. Part of that is maybe his own coach's doing, because he's not on Team USA this year, and that's got to upset him. It has to. It has to upset a guy that's won the Norris Trophy that doesn't get to represent his country at the Olympics. Shesterkin has not been the same goalie that he was 2 years ago. He's still a great goalie, but not the greatest of the great. And I just don't see this team having a prayer of making the playoffs.
They don't score. They don't draw penalties. There is really nothing overtly positive about what you can say. Yes, you can say the goaltending has been good, and it has been very good in spots. The penalty killing is certainly above average. But to your point, this team needs to go on a run to just get themselves back in the race. So even an 8-2 run, I'm not certain that gets them anywhere, because we know that between 75 and 80% of the games in the league are decided by one goal plus an empty net. And you're going to have all these 3-point games. You're chasing all of these clubs. Just take a look at the Buffalo Sabres. They have won 13 out of 14. And they are tied for the first wild card with that streak. So now you transfer that over to the Rangers, just trying to get back in the race. With that personnel, no way.
No. While you're gaining 2 points, 2 points, 2 points on a winning streak, right? Two. The problem is that the teams you're trying to jump over aren't going 0, 0, 0, 0.
That's right.
They're going 1, 1, 0, 1. If they're having a bad streak, 1. They're getting points, and so therefore your 2 points aren't as demonstrative as they once were. So it is really tough in this league, and we've been saying it for 3 years on this podcast. It's really tough in this league when you fall behind in the first half of the season to make it up in the second half.
The Rangers will enter their game against Seattle on Monday as wild card 8, but I don't want to leave this game without acknowledging the Bruins first, because Marat Nustadinov, his first career hat trick, it was a 4-goal game. And Pavel Zacha, his first career hat trick as well. And David Pastrnak picked up 6 assists. This was the first time since January of 1964 that 2 Bruins had hat tricks in the same game. Andy Hebington and Dean Prentice. And do you know what Andy Hebington's claim to fame was, Neil?
He played for the New York Rangers.
He did. But he, at one time in the mid-60s, was also the NHL Iron Man. 630 consecutive games played. So anyway, that game for Edmonton and Prentice came in an 11-0 win against the Toronto Maple Leafs in Maple Leaf Gardens. Perhaps you were there.
Perhaps, but I don't think so. I was far too young to be attending that game and going to school the next morning, probably kindergarten. I don't remember that game. I do remember when it was the opposite, when Sittler got all those goals and they beat the Boston Bruins in Maple Leaf Gardens by a score similar to that, but I regress.
And that one coming in 1976. And one more note on the Bruins, they follow up the rout on Saturday with a 1-0 win against Pittsburgh on Sunday. Jonas Korpisalo, 27-save shutout. So now the Bruins, who were struggling a couple of weeks back, have now won 5 out of 6.
Yeah, and they're not the healthiest team in the league either. But you know what? Marco Sturm is going to get votes for the Jack Adams Award as Coach of the Year. He's doing a fantastic job there. They are way above expectations that everybody had. In the offseason, people were all saying, this is going to be David Pastrnak and the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And it's not. He's getting a lot out of his guys.
One of them being Morgan Geekie, who actually left the game against the Rangers and did not play Sunday against Pittsburgh due to a family matter, but he is saying that all is fine, so expect him to be back in the lineup very shortly. The Toronto Maple Leafs, 7-0-2 in their last 9. They get a 5-0 shutout over Vancouver on Saturday. William Nylander, back after missing the last 6 games with a lower body injury. Goal and 2 assists. Jake McCabe also back in the lineup for the Toronto defense after missing a week. The Leafs have pulled themselves into wild card 4, 1 point out of a berth. And I think you got to give Craig Berube a lot of credit here, because when things weren't going well, he continued to deliver the hard message. He put it on the players, and now they are finally delivering.
And I'd like to give a shout out to Brad Treliving, being an ex-GM myself, and Brad Treliving being the general manager of Toronto, didn't panic, or let's say he didn't make panic moves. We don't know whether he panicked or not,
right,
but he didn't make panic moves. He didn't make dumb trades. He didn't fire the coaches. They made one move, which I would have thought was collectively done, in getting rid of an assistant coach who ran the power play and bringing in a new one. That's not been the total answer to this. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, when you compare their expectations before the season started, and you compare the Rangers' expectations, which the Rangers were never expected to be the Leafs, but they were expected to be a lot better, and the Leafs were expected to be a lot better. The Leafs have now gone on a run. The Leafs, you can see that they could go on enough of a run again that they are going to make it into the playoffs, maybe even make it into the top 3 teams in the division. You can see that that's possible with this team, and that's the difference between Toronto Maple Leafs and New York Rangers. One, it's believable. The other is not believable.
That coaching change you referred to a few moments ago, Steve Sullivan replacing Mark Savard. The Winnipeg Jets have now won 2 straight. They had a 5-1 win on Friday over the LA Kings, as Neil threw bouquets at me earlier. That snapped their 11-game winless streak and was their first win since December 13th. Eric Comrie was in goal. Made 23 saves, but when you look at what a big source of the problem was for Winnipeg, and they had all of these 1-goal losses, and you're just missing a goal here and there. Well, in this game against the Kings, they got goals from all 4 lines. Vlad Nemestikov, his first goal in 30 games, and his first point in 17 games. So these are the things that need to happen on a regular basis for Winnipeg if they're going to try to get themselves back in the playoff position. They're still a long ways away. They're 9 points out, but they did follow it up on Sunday with a win over the New Jersey Devils with Connor Hellebuyck in net.
And they're good enough put-together team to get confidence in themselves and shake off the lack of confidence that they've obviously had over this time. And it all started with Hellebuyck being hurt, and go on a run themselves and crawl back up into the playoffs. Will it be the year they hope for? Absolutely not, because We know that's not going to happen. But I have faith in their GM, Kevin Cheveldayoff, and their coach, Scott Arniel, that they will get this club back into the playoffs at least, maybe do some damage in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe this will be a year that they go far when they weren't expected to. Maybe this adversity that they faced over this first half of the season will really pay dividends in the playoff run. You never know, because we've seen that with teams. We've seen great adversity. St. Louis Blues, I might remind you, in 2019, last place in the league when they made the coaching change. Out went Mike Yeo, and in came Craig Berube. They end up winning the Stanley Cups. That could be the case for the Winnipeg Jets, but for now, they seem to have broken out of that slide.
And I think it just underscores how important balance offensively is for them. Now, there was other news coming out of that Winnipeg Jersey game on Sunday, and this concerns the Devils because Jonathan Kovacevic made his season debut for the Devils on defense. He'd been out with a knee injury. Dougie Hamilton, veteran, scratched. And now there is word that he is willing to be flexible with his 10-team trade clause if it works for both sides. Hamilton now willing to be moved. And this is really something for a team that is struggling right now. They're out of the playoffs. They're just a step above the Rangers in the Eastern Conference at wild card 7. And every night appears to be a fight for this team. And now Sheldon Keefe has sat Hamilton. And what do you do if you're Tom Fitzgerald?
Tom Fitzgerald's taking a lot of heat in New Jersey. There's a lot of people that are upset with him in his 5th season as GM of the Devils, and that things haven't gone really well, and that he's given out a lot of big contracts. I thought the Sheldon Keefe move was really good, bringing him in from Toronto. But I can tell you one thing: I don't like the decision to leave Jacob Markstrom in net for all 9 goals in a 9-0 shellacking to the hands of the New York Islanders in the UBS Arena. And the Dougie Hamilton benching, scratching is curious. I can't criticize it because I don't know enough. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not in the dressing room. Hamilton, as you said, will be 36 in June. This is 2 real veteran guys on the team, right? Markstrom and Hamilton. These guys have been around for a while.
Yeah.
You piss these guys off, they're going to have an influence over the rest of the team. They come in with sour looks on their face to practice. It's not good. These younger guys are looking up to them. And so they got to be careful here, I think, looking in from the outside, knowing nothing about the inside. They got to be careful how they handle these veterans, and they got to be careful how they handle people during a bad stretch that they're on right now, or else the Devils will find themselves, going golfing with the Rangers.
Hamilton has 2 years left on his contract at $9 million per season, and reportedly blocked a trade to San Jose over the summer, the Sharks being one of the teams that was not on his trade list. So this is something that I believe is going to continue to unfold. So not only is there drama in New York City, all you have to do is go across the river and you'll find some more in Newark.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And if they're not careful, you know what? Chris Drury and Tom Fitzgerald will be getting a tea time together. So will Mike Sullivan and Sheldon Keefe. The Devils have got to pull their socks up and get things going. We thought that the Devils would jump out of this when Jack Hughes got back from that bad finger laceration that he had.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been the case. They haven't been scoring. They can't score, even with him back in the lineup. So they got to find the right tonic.
We've spent a lot of time on negative, and we're going to now turn the page on that for a few positive items. Alex Ovechkin scores his 20th goal of the season. It was the opening goal in the Capitals' 3-2 loss in Nashville on Sunday. 21 seasons, at least 20 goals. And amazing at age 40 that he just continues to pump them in.
Incredible. I mean, there's nothing else to say. It's you're lucky to get to be able to watch Alex Ovechkin during his career.
Connor McDavid now has a career-high 18-game point streak. He scored his 30th goal. In a 4-3 shootout loss to the LA Kings on Saturday, McDavid is tied for the scoring lead with Nathan MacKinnon with 78 points. For the Oilers, though, this is one of these games where the Kings flew in from Winnipeg, and that's not a short flight because you're crossing over Saskatchewan to get from Manitoba to Alberta. They get in late, and still the Kings are able to muster up and then eventually win in the shootout.
While the Edmonton Oilers team has sat at home in Edmonton, probably watched the game on TV between the Jets and the Kings, and were well rested for a home game. So not all is good in oil country.
No, and the Kings have been having their own problems. But back to Nathan MacKinnon, who, as we said, tied with McDavid with 78 points. Pointless in 3 out of his last 4 games, but not to worry. Because at the other end of the ice, Trent Miner, goaltender, who got himself a start against the Columbus Blue Jackets on Saturday, gets his first NHL win, and it's a shutout, 4-0, making 29 saves. And there was another goalie who pulled the exact same trick in Nashville, Drew Commesso of the Blackhawks, 36 saves, his first NHL win, but he was pushed into action because the flu is ripping through the Blackhawks right now, and both Spencer Knight and Arvid Soderblom were both sidelined, and so Commesso had to play back-to-back games on Friday against the Caps, which he lost, but then goes to Nashville and gets himself a shutout. So congratulations to both Commesso and Miner for those milestone achievements.
And just for everybody's knowledge, Spencer Knight is on the ice today, healthy and at practice with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Some personnel notes, and we're going to stick with the Blackhawks. Connor Bedard returned in Friday's loss to Washington after missing 12 games with that shoulder injury. He had 2 assists in the win in Nashville. How about Jacob Slavin, defenseman for the Carolina Hurricanes? He's missed 39 games this season in total, including the last 10. He returns on Saturday, scores a late goal to give the Canes a 3-2 win over Seattle. Ken Gooley for the Montreal Canadiens returned Saturday against Detroit. He had an abductor injury that was suffered on October the 16th in the Habs' 5th game of the season. He had surgery 4 weeks later and played 18 minutes plus in the Canadiens' loss to Detroit. For the Pittsburgh Penguins, forward Brian Rust missed both games over the weekend with a lower body injury, the first one coming against the Calgary Flames Saturday and then Sunday in Boston. For the Winnipeg Jets, Colin Miller left in the first period of the win against the New Jersey Devils with a lower body injury. And more Devils news. Stefan Nason, knee surgery on IR. This is expected to be a long-term issue for Nason. And that comes on the heels of Zach McEwen, another forward, now out for the season after undergoing ACL surgery. He has played only 3 games this season and none since November the 12th. Alex Kerfoot of the Utah Mammoth on IR with an upper body injury. He's listed week to week. And a couple of goaltending notes. Carter Hart, told you he went down with apparent leg injury last week. He's now listed as week to week. And Neil Thatcher Demko put on IR for the second time this season. He left after the first period in the loss against Toronto on Saturday after allowing 3 goals on 6 shots. So things in Vancouver continue to spiral. The Canucks last now in the overall NHL standings.
Yeah, with a very pitiful 4 wins in Vancouver at home. Talk about an organization in flux and in turmoil. Boy, things are just not going well for them for the last 2 years. Now, Quinn Hughes, of course, is in Minnesota after they made that trade. So we'll see what happens there. But boy, oh boy, it's not good.
Right after the Quinn Hughes deal, the club played well. for the first few games coming out of that, but water always seeks its level, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And Thatcher Demko is a big part of that team. I mean,
Yeah.
he is an important piece. And when he's out, which he often is, things don't go too well for them. So you got to stay tuned. It's not an easy task for Adam Foote, the rookie head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, but it sure doesn't look good for things in British Columbia.
We have 3 signings to talk about. James Reimer signs a 1-year deal with the Ottawa Senators. A lot going on in Ottawa right now. Linus Ullmark is still sidelined. Levi Merrilainen has not played particularly well, being elevated into the number 1. So Reimer has made a ton of stops during his NHL career, and I think the Senators hoping that he can contribute and stop the bleeding.
Isn't it peculiar? And you got to mention this. Reimer's best known for being the starting goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep.
Toronto Maple Leafs arch rival, Ottawa Senators. Both teams live in Ontario. And now James Reimer will see what it's like to play for the Ottawa Senators against the Toronto Maple Leafs. In a 32-team league where, as Steve Yzerman said, the talent pool is thin. You know, you're reaching back for players from all over. It's not unheard of now that guys that played for the Rangers play for the Islanders. Guys that play for the Devils plays for this. Guys that plays for the Flames play for the Oilers. Guys that play for the Senators play for the Leafs. The Canadians and the Leafs. The Canadians and the Bruins. All the rivalries. Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers. Players have played for both of those teams. So it didn't used to be that way in the old days when you said, okay, I'll trade you this guy, but don't trade him back into our division.
Remember Cam Talbot played for both the Flames and the Oilers, as did Grant Fuhr.
Yeah, that's true.
Philip Broberg, defenseman for the St. Louis Blues, 6 years, $8 million per year. So how does he go out in his first game to celebrate? He gets knocked out. The second shift that he takes against the Golden Knights on Saturday, he was hit by Mark Stone. And right after that, Stone, who was the captain of Vegas, got into a fight with Braden Shen, the Blues captain, sticking up for his teammate. And then, of course, Stone winds up scoring the empty net goal to seal the victory for Vegas. And then in a 7-2 win in San Jose on Sunday, Stone has 3 assists in that game. So while we had no word on Broberg as to how long, if at all, he's going to be out, I do want to talk about Stone for a second, because you watch this guy play. He's not fast. He doesn't have a big shot, but he never makes a mistake on either side of the puck. It is remarkable how efficient this guy is in all facets of the game. He is literally a perfect player, much in the way that Patrice Bergeron was.
And he scores big goals. That's
Yeah.
the other thing. He can score big goals, and he's the captain of the team, and he's the captain for a reason. A person might have wondered why Mark Stone was named captain at the time when he was for the Vegas Golden Knights. I think now, after seeing his body of work, we know why. And he's certainly a leader. And give Braden Shen some credit, too. I don't like this stuff about a guy having to fight after delivering a clean check, but Braden Shen is not Luke Shen. He's not a huge guy.
Yeah.
But he'll take on anybody, and he'll stick up for his team, and he is the captain of the St. Louis Blues. So you got to give him some credit for saying to the captain of the Stanley Cup winning Vegas Golden Knights a couple of years ago, you can't do that to my guy.
One final signing. Jonathan Aspero, defenseman for the Boston Bruins, extends for 2 years with the club. This guy has played for 6 years in the AHL. Never got a sniff at the NHL level. He's played 25 games for the Bruins this season and is a plus 15 and was a plus 5 against the Rangers on Saturday. So here's another part that has come in to Boston, everything fitting relatively nicely. You know, whether the Bruins make the playoffs or not, whether they can sustain through the entire 82-game schedule remains to be seen, because they're on wild card 3 as we enter play today. But still, got to give Don Sweeney some credit here because we were very skeptical of this club. And I still question whether or not they're going to have enough depth to make it to the first round of the playoffs in April. But small pieces like this have certainly contributed to the Bruins' success this year.
Look, he's made a lot of really good calls. We thought he'd made a lot of really bad calls last season, but he made a lot of really good calls this offseason. Coming into this season, Marco Sturm as head coach was a great call. Some of the players that he has signed and traded for and moved for have come in and played really well. Somebody has Zadorov turned around. I mean, he was horrible last year.
Yeah.
He's playing really well this year. That's not Don Sweeney's doing, but that is the coaching staff who Don Sweeney put in place. So, you know what? If it was fair to criticize him in the offseason, it's fair to give him credit during the season now for the moves that he's made.
That's what we do here, though.
Well, we just tell the truth. We don't say things that aren't true. That we just say here's the facts, and the guy's done a good job.
Absolutely. All right. So let's look ahead to the next two nights. On Monday, 3 games that I have earmarked. Seattle at the Rangers, just because.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Garden will be a snake pit if Seattle gets off to a lead in this game.
Florida is at Buffalo. And the reason that this one comes on the radar for me is we already mentioned that the Sabres have won 13 out of 14. The Panthers coming off a win in Ottawa on Saturday. But as we've often pointed out on this show, Neil, you see things starting to creep into a team's play, even when they're winning, that might send some alarm bells up. And they were up 4-1 against the Anaheim Ducks on Saturday. And the Ducks got that game to 4-3 because the Sabres let their foot off the gas a little bit. And I'm going to be interested to see if Florida doesn't go in there and end this run for Buffalo on Monday.
You could very easily see it going either way. You're right. That's going to be an interesting one, as is Toronto at Colorado. Like, is Toronto really coming out of this funk? We know how good Colorado is. Colorado's not going to go into any funk. We know Nathan McKinnon has had a little bit of a dry spot here for the last few games, but Colorado's Colorado. But how good is Toronto? We'll find out when they play in there in Colorado. I'm also interested to see how the Carolina Hurricanes fare in Detroit, or basically how does Detroit do with Carolina coming into Little Caesars Arena. And that is a game tonight when Sergei Fedorov will have his number 91 retired and brought up to the rafters in Detroit. So that'll be an interesting thing to see in the pregame.
You had a little something to do with him coming to the NHL?
A little bit, yeah. But can't make it out to Detroit, Michigan tonight because I had to do this podcast.
Yeah, all right, blame it on me. On Tuesday, those very same Red Wings go to Boston, and two clubs that were on the outside looking in last year, and of course Detroit's been on the outside for the last 9 years, and this will be a key game in that Atlantic Division with the Red Wings entering play in first place, so unfamiliar territory for them. Also, the Winnipeg Jets looking for 3 in a row, but they're going to have pretty stiff tests with the New York Islanders coming in.
Yeah, the Islanders, who are a team that, you can say have really not played poorly for a stretch. They've not had a lot of bad games. They've not had a lot of games that represent last season. They've lost their share, but when they lose, they don't get blown out. So they're going to be a tough team for Winnipeg. They don't go down easy, the New York Islanders, anymore. What about Dallas Stars, who I can't figure out because, you watch these teams night after night and you don't know what you're going to get out of Dallas. It's like, what is a hot dog made out of? Like, you don't really know. Same thing as the Dallas Stars are going into Anaheim. We'll see if they've got Jacob Trouba back on their defense, which I think is a big part of it. And we'll see what happens in that game, but that's going to be an interesting one.
The Stars are 3-4 in their last 10, and the Ducks have lost 5 straight. and are 1-8-1 in their last 10. But kind of the opposite of what I said against Buffalo, perhaps that little push at the end of Saturday's game, maybe that's kind of a little bit of traction that the Ducks are getting, and perhaps they bring that home as they start a homestand.
Absolutely.
Our website is NHLWraparound.com. Check out Smith's picks. Enough said. The guy is on an absolute heater, so if you're picking winners, you may want to look and see who he's got in store for this evening. And really, Neil makes his picks all season long, so check them out, as he is now over 100 games above the 500 mark. You can catch us on Apple or Spotify, and if you do, please leave us a review. And if you tune in on YouTube, please subscribe. You can also find us on X, Instagram, and TikTok. NHL Wraparound returns on Wednesday, short shifts on Friday. So enjoy the hockey Monday and Tuesday, and we will speak to you again on Wednesday with NHL Wraparound. Take care.